Calaroga Shark Media.
Gianmarco Soresi's new special is terrific. We'll talk about that in a second. Hi, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. This is the normal episode for Monday morning. I'll continue to do Kimmel bonuses. There was one yesterday afternoon. And I know in light of the Jimmy Kimmel story, a lot of people are concerned about free speech and government overreach. And again, I'll cover that in bonus episodes. Totally separate topic. This week is the first ever Riyadh Comedy Festival. Let me tell you who's heading to Saudi Arabia to perform at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Bill Burr, he'll be there on the 26th. Andrew Santino and Bobby Lee, they're there on the 26th and 27th. Whitney Cummings is there on the 26th. Chris DiStefano on the 27th. Dave Chappelle, he's there on the 27th. The not-so-canceled Aziz Ansari on the 28th. Kevin Hart on September 28th. Nimesh Patel also on the 28th. Jessica Kirson, September 29th. Ali Sadiq on the 30th. Gabe Iglesias on the 1st, Omid Jalili on the 1st, Chris Tucker, October 2nd, Jeff Ross, the roast master, he'll be roasting, I guess, at the Riyadh Comedy Festival on October 2nd, Russell Peters doing 3 shows on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, Zarna Garg is heading over there on October 2nd, Mark Normand, one of your favorite comedians, he's there on October 3rd, Pete Davidson, who tragically, his father was killed on 9/11. His father was a New York City firefighter. I don't know if you know that. Pete Davidson is performing at the Riyadh Comedy Festival on October 3rd, Ari Spears on October 5th, Jimmy Carr and Louis C.K. together on October 6th. You know, if that was in New York City, I'd go see that. That's a pretty good show. Jack Whitehall on October 7th. Palestinian-American comedian Mo Amer on October 7th. Wayne Brady, he's there October 7th. They'll be doing some improv. Joe Coy, he's there on October 8th. Maybe he's going to make some jokes about Taylor Swift. You don't know. Sam Morrill's there October 8th. Tim Dillon was going to be there October 8th, but he was disinvited for he made some comments on his podcast. Tom Segura, he's going to be there October 8th. Andrew Schultz, he's got a couple podcasts that are political. He's there on October 9th. Hannibal Buress is there on the 9th. Sebastian Maniscalco is there on the 9th. So you can see what a big comedy festival this is coming to Riyadh. And by the way, did I promote? I'm talking about the whole Jimmy Kimmel free speech, government oppression thing. I'm doing that as bonus episodes. Just I forget if I mentioned that at the top. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know what was happening in comedy festivals this week and where all your favorite comedians are heading. Now, I had that in the notes already because I like to let you know what's happening in comedy festivals, but I saw Jason Zinneman, friend of the show, wrote in the New York Times, starting next week, many of the most popular American stand-up stars, he mentioned Chappelle, Bill Burr, and Kevin Hart in parentheses, will perform at a huge new festival in Riyadh, hosted by a government not exactly known for its openness to dissent. The optics were never great, but the timing is now especially awkward. The Hollywood Reporter had an article about the most trusted people in media. Some of it was focused on newscasters, but in terms of late-night hosts, Jimmy Fallon is the host who gets most often labeled as the least political of the broadcast late-nighters, has the highest trust, while Jon Stewart, his trust rating is down a little bit. Greg Gutfeld saw his credibility rise with Americans since the last time the survey was taken in 2024. Stephen Colbert's trust numbers are down 7 points. And I think this survey was taken before Jimmy Kimmel was removed from the airwaves. But at the time of the survey, 48% of respondents in the Hollywood Reporter Morning Consult poll described Jimmy Kimmel as having, quote, a very liberal or, quote, somewhat liberal lean, which was higher than all his other late-night contemporaries. Stand Up for Heroes is coming back as part of the New York Comedy Festival. It's its 19th year. It'll be November 10th at the David Geffen Hall in Lincoln Center. Nice lineup, including Mike Birbiglia, Alex Edelman, and Jim Gaffigan. Maybe he'll try and sell you some bourbon. Tom Papa, Jon Stewart, and more. Stand Up for Heroes has raised $113 million to date to help all veterans and military families have successful futures. I did get to watch Gianmarco Soresi's new special on YouTube. It is fantastic, like really good. As I was watching it, I was thinking, wow, the number of jokes per second is just incredible. And then I remember Dane Cook had a laughs per metric thing that he used to do. And I was like, oh, that isn't cool. So I'm going to quote Bob Hope theory, which was tell a joke like every 6 seconds and some of them might land. I mean, Gianmarco is just joke after joke after joke. And so many of them land strongly. The special is really good. I also appreciate, and other reviews have pointed out, his physicality. And at first I was like, oh, his physicality's helped selling those jokes. That's interesting. And then I took my eyes off the screen. I'm like, nope, the physicality is just part of the entertainment, but the material is solid, solid, solid. Plus, you get the physicality on top. A really strong special. Gianmarco told the Post, "This was a real amalgamation of chunks from my first year, bigger stories that have been fine-tuned over the years, and bits from the last 6 months. Some people are more familiar with my crowd work, and I think they'll be pleasantly surprised that this is more of a joke special. Basically, the idea was, if you didn't know me, this is your intro to my taste, who I am, how I feel, and a good preview of what you're going to get if you ever see me live." Some of it got cut. He told the Post, "Yeah, it was originally 80 minutes. We cut a lot. We cut a joke that I've been doing since my first year that I worried I'd put out too much. It's about my father. He's Italian. We kiss each other goodbye. One day my roommate asked, 'Do you kiss each other in public?' And I said, 'Yeah, it'd be weird if I only kissed him in private.' That's a great joke. My girlfriend, who's also my manager, is my guiding light in terms of telling me I think that's been done in a way that it would feel like an audience member might think, I've already heard that part, so I left it out." You know, as I was watching the special, I was like, wait, I've heard this chunk. Where do I know this chunk from? And I was just confused. And then I realized, oh, he had done a little bit of this material back in July up at Montreal. And I was like, oh, okay, that's where I know that from. Gianmarco says, "I'm retiring all the material from this special. So right now I'm talking about AI and the ways it feels like AI and robotics have moved past helping human beings." I was trying to see if I could get him on. I was talking with his publicist. We're very friendly. I'm very friendly with that camp, and Gianmarco's running around. So this isn't like one of those like, oh, I can't get to, whatever comedian I can't get to. Mark Maron. I would love to get to Mark Maron. I just can't. But I was thinking when I was watching it, I'm like, wow, Gianmarco here is just torching all his material. I was wondering what he had left. So it's good to hear that answer. Gianmarco said, "I try to paint my dad in a more positive light because I found out he's been on Ashley Madison and a number of dating apps. A woman reached out to me and she decided to not date my father, partially because of my jokes. So I had to try and readjust that so I get a new stepmom." I will do more of that tomorrow. I'm recording this one on Sunday. I normally don't record on Sunday because everyone's home. And oh my God, right now, both dogs are going at it. I've gone up twice and been like, can you be quiet? Now, to be fair, this isn't really a podcast studio. It's the basement, and my family is allowed to live here, but it's really hard to focus today, so I'll save the Gianmarco stuff. People has this thing with Michael Che, and I'm having trouble understanding the story because the way they wrote it. Their opening paragraph is quoting Michael Che in a new documentary, In Whose Name, and the quote is Michael Che asking Kanye West, "I'm the black comedian that made a joke about Cosby. That's effed up. Why'd you do that to me?" It was backstage at SNL, and Kanye West apparently said, "You can't always have, every time you have black subject matter like Bill Cosby, that you have to have a black comedian talking about him." He motions to Michael Che and said, "You know what I mean?" Kanye claimed he was bullied backstage for his Make America Great Again hat and was told, "Don't go out there with that hat on. They bullied me backstage. They bullied me. And then they say I'm in a sunken place. You want to see that sunken place? I'm going to put my Superman cap on." The documentary then cuts to Che approaching West backstage. And then Che says to West, "You good with me for real? That was effed up." So I don't really understand what's going on there. I guess I'd have to watch it. On Friday, I shared that thing with Guy Branum on the airplane. Well, TMZ says Guy says he's going to bring the man to court. TMZ happened to be at the airport when Guy Branum got off a plane. The photographer asked Guy Branum about it. TMZ says Guy showed them a bruise from the alleged elbow swing and said he's going to file a police report and a lawsuit, telling the man, "You can't hit somebody because you think they're fat." Guy says Delta Airlines has called him back to talk about what happened. TMZ says Guy travels a lot for work and has some Delta status himself. I want to know how he wound up in a middle seat. I mean, it's not that hard to not get in a middle seat, especially if you're willing to spend a little money. I don't know. Hey, here's a shocker. Johnny Mac remembered to do the Toronto Comedy Festival today. I almost forgot. I had started to go into the Steve Harvey story, which is the next thing in my script. And then I was like, oh, why don't you actually do Toronto for once? So I don't have to get Johnny Macbot out for the third day in a row. Let's see what's happening in Toronto today. David Lynch's Seinfeld at 8 o'clock. What is this? This sounds amazing. Now, I have to actually Google this. Since the new people took over JFL, the websites aren't as good. I'm just saying. All right, here's a review from July. David Lynch's Seinfeld was at the Toronto Fringe, and Parton and Pearl reviewed it. They wrote, "Imagine an episode of Seinfeld. Now imagine that there's a freakishly tall, faceless man called the Tall Man watching Jerry do stand-up from the audience. That's how David Lynch's Seinfeld begins, an entirely original episode of Seinfeld with a Lynchian twist." All right, that sounds like a lot of fun. At 8 o'clock, Matt writes Matterday Write Live. 9:30, another David Lynch Seinfeld. Also at 9:30, Wheel of Comedy. And then Midnight Madness at 11:30. So it's a pretty quiet night, as Mondays tend to be at festivals. If we were up there, I'd say, well, let's definitely do Seinfeld at 8, and then, I don't know, Wheel of Comedy at 9:30, grab a couple beers, go to bed. Steve Harvey explained why he has quit stand-up comedy. He said it's too hard to do right now. He's got that nice Family Feud gig, and apparently that's what airs on ABC at 11:30 at night, so he might be pumping out a lot more episodes soon. Steve said, I left stand-up because I had so many shows. I had built such a catalog of work. I was making money. I had to let something go. And if I toured on the weekends, I wouldn't even have a family. So I let stand-up go because I saw the change coming. You got to react or participate. So my participation was to get away from it because the cancel culture started becoming everywhere. Comedy's too hard to do right now, and all you got to do is look at the way cancel culture works. I believe he had said this before Kimmelgate. Did I do this one over the weekend? I've recorded so many things I can't remember. Steve Martin had to cancel his shows over the weekend. He has COVID. He went on social, said, Dear Virginia Beach and Richmond, sadly, I've come down with COVID. I can't possibly do the shows you deserve, so Marty and I must cancel tonight and tomorrow, but we will return under better circumstances. Steve Martin is 80 years old. And I don't think the people of Peoria are too happy with Liz Mealy. She released a video on Facebook and YouTube. Liz says she enjoys traveling and then said she visited Peoria once and that was enough. We don't need to do that again. If you're like, hey, Liz, what's in Peoria? Nothing. There's nothing. They had one coffee shop. It was open 35 minutes and I never woke up in time. They didn't have Uber. Everybody has a guy with a truck. How do you not have Uber? I was losing my mind. I'm freaking out. I feel so isolated. I called my little sister. She's like, describe Peoria. And I was like, all right, opening scene of Wall-E. I'm the robot. Trash is everywhere. No one's around. Back in November, Shane Gillis had coincidentally said, I was in Peoria. New number 1 on the power rankings of blanking town in the entire country. Peoria, Illinois that was hell, dude. Just me and the bums were the only ones outside walking around. -4 in Peoria sucks. That was hell. And that is your comedy news on a Monday. I'm pretty sure there'll be a Kimmel bonus episode, so I'll see you in a few hours and then back Tuesday with the normal episode. Have a good one.